Okay, so let's look at this image here in Photoshop. So just looking at the content of this image, do you think this is using the full the full 16 million possible colors? No, it's clearly not. So this is a good candidate for reducing the number of colors and getting away with it. I do like a nice scone. So let's go into Save for Web and have a look at the different options here. So on this side on the left, I'm going to show you the original image. Oh, spinning beach ball of death. Guess the image is quite large, so it's doing a lot of work. Do you know what I might do? Okay, here we are. It's okay. It was a bit, so just so it's our lovely scone, and this is the original on the left, and on the right I'm going to use GIF. Okay. And just going to set this to 256 colors. Okay. For now, I'm going to leave dithering turned off, and I'll explain dithering in the next class. At the moment, the palette I've selected is the Grayscale Palette, so we've got 256 shades of grey, and that gives us a black and white image. But that's not kind of what we're interested in. So, different palettes here now. This Windows palette is a palette that uses the set of colors that are in the Windows OS when it's restricted to 256 colors. That's hardly ever done anymore. One of the reasons graphic designers, one of the many reasons they preferred Macs was that the Mac palette was slightly better. I don't think there's any evidence of that here though. Okay, that's still equally bad. No, that's because there aren't 256 colors in there. Let's look at Perceptual. With 256 colors, this is the 256 that it's chosen. And a palette like this is not surprising given the content of the image. If we zoom in, we might be able to see some of the consequences of the choices that we've made. Okay? So if we zoom in really close, you can see here that in the original 24-bit image, there's lots of different shades of beige. But when we're restricted to 256 colors, there aren't as many, and so you get this banding here. And that's one of the things you see when you reduce the number of colors, when you've got a fairly restricted palette, is that where you had subtle gradients of color, you start to get bands of distinct color. It doesn't look so good. The mug in my pitch on the left there is quite smooth. Here, it's really having to improvise. Now you see, it's doing a crap job of the mug, but when it did its calculations, the scony type colors were predominant. There was many more pixels with a scone type color. So that's why it dedicated many more pixels in the palette to that. There are different algorithms then for doing that. The selective one seems to be fairly similar, if you ask me. Adaptive is quite different, but still the same range of colors. I just wonder, has it done a better or worse job of handling the mug? The mug is where we're going to show it up because there's so few white pixels that they're the ones that are going to sacrifice the most. They're the ones that are going to be sacrificed. And selective and perceptual, no difference there, and restrictive. Restrictive truly sucks. So you can look those up and see how those different palette selection schemes work. Off the top of my head, I don't remember. Some of them, it's just a pure numbers game. You want as many pixels as possible to have a color in the palette that's close to their natural color. And then sometimes they can be more sophisticated. Some algorithms might take into account the fact that, yeah, but we're going to be quite sensitive here to the lightness and darkness of that cup and do things differently. Okay? You can then choose your own palette if you want. Remember I said that in the early days you were concerned about images having different palettes. So you could save a palette and then you could load that palette and convert an image using those colors. Black and white obviously is just black and white. You can see here you've only got 2 colors in the palette. Black and white. And black and white probably isn't the best choice. If you were only having 2 colors, let's go back to Perceptual here, but bring it down to 2 colors. Black and white wouldn't be the 2 that you would choose. So you can see here now that we have, beige and brown. It's very interesting to reduce the number of colors and see how far you can push it. Like I would wager that at 128 pixels, this would still look okay. So, okay, we're seeing the problems in the same places, but overall, still doing okay. If we go down to 64 colors, okay, now it's starting to give way a bit. Of course, if we were looking at it from far enough away, wouldn't be that big a deal. But clearly 64 is too few, but 128 is fine. So saved a bit there. So instead of it costing €8, but initially it was 24 bits per pixel, so it might have cost €24 to store per month. Bringing it down to 8 bits, talking €8. If it went to 128 colors, that's down to 7 bits. So we're talking €7 now instead of 8. Okay? So depending on the image, you can typically make do with 256, which is a huge saving. And now that we have sophisticated tools like Photoshop, it can automate a lot of this. So what I'd like you to do is open up some images and mess with the palette that you use for saving it as a GIF and see how reducing the number of colors also has an impact on that. But for now, leave the dithering off. And I'll explain dithering in the next class.